as I was saying, this is a skill set that is not exclusive to any area of the industry. It is a skill set that everybody needs to have. It doesn't matter what part of the business you're in. So I'm grateful that you're here with us. If it's okay, I just want to ask a couple quick questions before you start your demo.
Sure.
You've been doing makeup for a while, but somehow or another, you've become this airbrush expert and you've started working with them too a little bit, but really what got you started in makeup, but then how did you shift into this, like the go-to tattoo cover girl? Like, how did that happen?
I like a challenge. I started doing makeup in Central Illinois in a town that, I actually started in the fashion industry, and I went into the bridal industry, working on the fashion side of it, and somehow it got turned into bridal makeup, and then my career just kind of snowballed into film, television, commercials, things like that. But obviously bridal is where things started, and I just will never forget that first time I was asked to cover a tattoo and I was not prepared. And it was really early in my career, and I knew color theory, and that's all I knew. I didn't know what products to use. I had not started airbrushing yet, and I was terrified. I don't know why, but then as obviously fast forward several years, and all of these artists I come in contact with on a daily basis, especially during the quarantine when I've been doing a lot of online education too. And tattoos are still affecting them the same way they affected me that first time, so it's good to pay it forward now. And obviously I discovered airbrushing, and when I covered my first tattoo with an airbrush and cut my time down significantly, I think that was just a game changer for me. I was working a big show at New York Fashion Week. We had 30 models we had 11 models to cover tattoos on. And they handed me the first one who had 30 tattoos, one of them being a giant back piece. And I had, 7 minutes. So it was absolutely terrifying, but that was my career changing moment. After I did that, I didn't freak out anymore.
Not freaking out on a job is a good thing.
Yeah.
Let me ask you another question. This comes up a lot in our bridal programs, and I know what our answer is, but if you're doing a client and you're working on someone and there is a tattoo cover involved, you have your rate for doing their makeup or their body makeup. But if there's a tattoo cover involved, how do you rate that? How do you price that?
I'm so glad you asked that question. That's actually probably the number one thing. Nobody knows how to charge for it. So that adds to why they don't want to do it. And I usually tell people as a base, you obviously have an idea of the rates in your area and the services available in your area. So if you take into consideration that you can do a tattoo coverage, and then if you're airbrushing it, then that's an additional skill set. And then you figure out what is that desired hourly rate that I want to make as an artist, and then how long will it take me to cover this tattoo. So for example, I'm going to lean you back real quick. This one right here, tiny little guy, most of the time this is an afterthought to a bride. They're like, oh, last minute, can you get that thing covered real quick? And a lot of times we're scheduled pretty tight, but something like that's going to take 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Let's say, I'm just using round numbers. Let's say you want to make $100 an hour. It's going to take a quarter of an hour. So 25 bucks. That's kind of the formula I give everybody to kind of build on. And obviously keeping in mind that if you're an airbrush artist, then that's an additional skill set. And with an airbrush, you're using a lot less product. So it's very economical for you as an artist.
That's great. And do you find, just again on pricing, because it comes up so often, I want to have answers when we're having classes and sessions, and I can answer that question. So, is there, if you've got a full back to cover, like what are some of the, maybe it's a better question is to say, like, what are some challenges with covering tattoos that you've encountered? And is there any time that you say, I can't do that? I won't be able to accomplish that for this purpose.
I have luckily not had to run into something where I've said I couldn't do it at that time, based off of the time. I mean, when they sat me down in front of a full back piece and 5 to 7 minutes at New York Fashion Week for a giant designer. I was mortified, but I just did it and I figured out a way to do it. And, you know, ironically, they threw a full back shirt on her, so it didn't even need to be covered, but whatever. But with that being said, I would say some of the biggest challenges on something like that is if it's a solid back piece without a lot of empty space between the ink, that is ideal. If you have separate tattoos all over the back and they are spaced out, that's actually more challenging because you do have to blend it with the surrounding skin. Whereas that giant back piece, it's all one, you just, you know, softening the edges and blending it with the shoulder skin or the sides, you know, the lat area. But when you have separate tattoos, I would say that's been one of my most challenging tattoos to cover is something like that.
Okay. Yeah. So, have you ever, you know, working alongside other people, or maybe when you've seen something, what are some fails, either fails that you've seen or you've heard of, or things that you can give our audience as sort of a, you know, don't do this. I know you think it might work, but don't do this, because you're going to be showing us what does work. So we won't be able to see what doesn't work. What are some things that you've encountered, or maybe some mistakes that you've made along the way, that you can give our crew here as some tips about that?
Well, I would say, you know, we as artists we try to be ready for any situation thrown at us. So in most cases, you would love to say you have a consultation with the client prior, so you know you're covering this tattoo, but what if you don't have that liberty and that, you know, the day of comes and it's time and they have a bunch of, for example, on her neck, like she's got a bunch of DeVellis hair and neck hair right here, just fine baby hair, but you can't cover a tattoo over that cleanly. So you need to be prepared for hair removal, last minute hair removal, in which case I always have a dermaplaning tool with interchangeable heads. So that I'm 100% sterile for that. I'm a licensed cosmetologist, so I'm able to do that in my state. But that's huge, hair removal. If you have time in advance, you need to let them know. If it's like, if they have a face or a neck that has a lot of hair and you're covering tattoos there, they should probably get that sugared for hair removal a few days in advance. Just make sure that you are removing the hair. That's one of the number one things. And you have to remember to prep the skin. It's just like makeup. It's only going to look as good as the skin it's on. So you got to remove all that oil out of there. And then I would say the only real big thing that nobody thinks of, and I have actually tested this. We did field testing on this. That whole thing, you know, like water breaks down water, silicone breaks down silicone, alcohol breaks down alcohol. So the Temp 2 Dura line is alcohol based, and alcohol breaks down alcohol. And so I had heard a long time ago, wow, if there's a lot of drinking going on at a wedding reception, would that affect it? Well, it does. Alcohol escapes our body through our skin. So among other ways, but it does come through the skin. So alcohol does break down alcohol. So that is something to consider as well.
Well, I'm not much of a drinker, as our TPG family knows. Who's laughing? Who's laughing? Listen, Amanda. Also, that alone is very helpful. So let's so don't get wasted if you had your tattoo covered, everybody. And I think also, you know, and joking aside, that's an important thing to say. You know, if you do a bride's upper back and you use Dura or an alcohol-based product because it's going to last the longest and that's what's going to be the best for it, and you don't say, hey, listen, just so you know, it's alcohol-based. It's the way we have to cover this. If you drink a lot, alcohol will come out through your system and it will go away. It will rub off. If you don't say that, she's just going to think you did a terrible job and it got messed up. So I think it's a really important thing to say in the beginning. I know I can't, you know.
Yeah, and what I found is it doesn't even always necessarily come off as much as it breaks down the formula, and also it does cause it to oxidize at that point because the pH is changing so much. So that's what I have seen. I've actually been at a wedding reception early in my days of doing things like this. And I had covered a small one and I saw it and I was like, oh no, I can see like it's getting darker. So I pulled her aside and touched it up. But it clicked years later. I was like, oh yeah, I get it. Okay. So knowing the chemistry behind what you're working with and, you know, just feeling confident working with the product. Oh, you're muted.
It's joyful when I get muted, isn't it? Do you always use an alcohol-based product for tattoo cover?
Not always, no. I know a silicone-based product, if I can, is such a beautiful skin-like finish that why wouldn't I try to use that when I can? But if you're going to be somewhere where it's going to be high transfer, high moisture area, then the alcohol base is probably the way to go, especially if it's going to come in contact with, like if I'm just using it in a wedding situation, if the dress is going to rub on that area, things like that, then it's going to be a little bit more durable that way. But no, if I can use a silicone-based formula, I would love to because it just looks really natural.
Awesome. Cool. All right, I'll let you get to it because I know we're here to learn info, but we're also here to watch some demo. For those of you guys who joined us after I said this, we're very fortunate that while we've been watching lots of Zooms and lots of FaceTime lives and all FaceTime live, no, that's not a thing. Instagram lives, and watching people do their own makeup as demos. Tanya has been quarantining for the last 7 weeks with her sister, Tiffany. So we have the good fortune of having her be able to do a model for us today. So I'm just going to hand it over to you. So what I had said before is if you're going to post any pictures from this online, remember we don't do any video, please, from your phones or anything of our session. You can take as many photos as you'd like, but please make sure that as you are posting, since this is a TPG program and sponsored by Temp2, which we want to make sure we show our gratitude to them if you do share on social that you post. We're so lucky that Tanya's sister, Tiffany, was quarantining with her and we got to see a model. Sounds like a lot to say, but we certainly don't want to have it look like Temp2 or the Powder Group are encouraging Tanya to work on a model without a mask. So handing it over to you, and I'm going to mute myself so that I don't talk.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining. I've been excited to do this. I do a lot of online education these days, and I find that the tattoo coverage portion of any of the classes I do seems to get the most questioning. Obviously, even in real life throughout the years, it's just always been about the tattoo coverage. So I want to kind of put you guys at ease on how that works and make it as easy as possible for you. I have used a lot of other products doing this besides Temp2. Yes, I'm a global artist and educator for Temp2, so I am using their Dura line today, which they come in pre-packed. These are the 2 tattoo coverage kits. Luckily, you get the foundations and the color correctors in these kits, so you don't even have to think about it, which is great. So the big thing is I have used other brands and they are great as well. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make it so that you use less product to achieve better, more natural looking coverage. And it's not hard to do with an airbrush, but in a pinch, if you have this product and you're not comfortable with airbrushing it, you can apply it by hand as well. So just to put that out there. But I guess I should start at the very beginning, just like the sound of music. And it all starts with this puppy right here. I don't know. I mean, guys, I know that you guys have taken so many classes. You guys have been around for a long time. And I don't want to seem like I'm, you know, just going to keep repeating the same thing, but I'm going to keep repeating the same thing because the color wheel is exactly where all of this starts. Okay. It's one time when I would say it might be a little different. In makeup, we're working with a skin tone. We're not working on a white canvas, okay? So on a white canvas, for example, if you have redness in the skin, let's say it's rosacea, I'm just gonna throw that out there. If you have red, obviously across from red is green, right? But if it is not intense redness on the skin, you can get away with a yellow to correct that, okay? That is because we are not working on a white canvas. We're working on something with a skin tone, okay? That would be the one time when I would say that we maybe venture a little bit off of this, but other than that, color theory is color theory. But there are two ways to go about using color theory when it comes to tattoo coverage. And I usually teach both schools of thought just so that you can see which one you feel more comfortable with, which one's more effective. I encourage you to try both of them. There's the school of thought where you go in and you do your color correction first, and then you conceal and foundation and finish it off, okay? So there's that. And then there's the school of thought where you correct and conceal together. And I'm gonna teach with both of them so you guys can see. And then when we're done, I'll tell you which one I do on a regular basis. I'll leave the suspense out there. But so today, because I have my quarantine buddy here, she has a real tattoo on her neck, but I gave her some fake tattoos. I had a couple transfers laying around and I just filled in a little color so that we didn't just deal with a one-tone tattoo. I'm going to show you both because let's be honest, these little neck tattoos here, you know, you're going to see these all the time. And those are the easy ones to cover, right? It's one tone. You don't have to change colors. Boom. We know there's going to be a orangey red situation in here, and then we're going to conceal it. But then you add color. Okay. And so I gave her color, and these are good. And this does say mom, just so you know. Okay. So with this one, I'm going to start on the neck. I did this one yesterday too, because I was testing out a new formula that I'm trying out. I did this one and I did not remove, remember I had mentioned removing the hair. I am going to actually show you what that looks like. For those of you who are not comfortable with doing that, having a dermaplaning tool on hand is very simple. I'm using one by Stacked Skincare. I love the interchangeable heads. It's very, very quick. It's super compact. It's not one of those vibrating ones, the ultrasonic ones or whatever they call them. So really what you're going to do is you're just going to hold that skin super tight and just like at a 45-degree angle, we're just going to real quick pull the vellus hair off of there. And then of course, just be real gentle about it. The great thing about this is that that is also removing any dry flaky skin. So the tattoo coverage is going to go on even smoother. Another thing to remember when it comes to tattoo coverage is if you happen to see a lot of rough skin, she's got some dry patches from where she got sunburnt doing a project outside that I asked her to do. It's my fault. But anyway, I just want to make sure that we all know that. So the next thing I do is I always keep these little alcohol pads in my kit prior to the state of the world today. So I'm prepared. I have a ton of these. So just make sure you know that you need to wipe the skin clean. However, that being said, I am not going to do that when I'm working on these two tattoos because these are alcohol-based ink. So I don't want to remove the tattoos before I get a chance to cover them for you. So don't hold that against me. This one though, we're going to go ahead and just wipe at that one. Okay. And then, like I said, the tattoo coverage kits a lot of times come with the color correctors needed, but you still have to have a little bit of an understanding of what you're dealing with here. So when we're looking at this, we're seeing what they refer to as like the tattoo black or tattoo blue black. You need to understand that any of these outlines, like those big tribal pieces, things like that, they are obviously not normally just black. And you have to identify, is that undertone more of a blue black or a green black? Because it goes both ways. And I've seen it go both ways. And if you know that, then you're going to pick the right color corrector for that. But if let's say this was a green black, then I'm going to go on a different end of the spectrum than I would with the blue black. So generally, I will say that you're probably looking between these two colors as a concealer, or I'm sorry, a corrector for a tattoo black, okay? Somewhere in this family, okay? With all of the Temp 2 Dura colors, I should say, yes, they're alcohol-based. They have 12 foundation shades, a nice range, and they have, I think, 4 correctors in each of those kits, and it accommodates pretty much anything you would want to mix together to conceal. I tried to put a little bit of each color in my fake tattooing today so that we could see moving from color to color and how quickly we can do it also, because that seems to be a question that a lot of people have when you're working with an airbrush. You know, do you have to clean in between every color? It's really time consuming. That's why I want to do it by hand, blah, blah, blah. Let's just say you're doing it by hand. If you're doing this by hand, then what you have to do is you have to go in and stay within the lines and hand paint everything on in pretty thick layers, okay? At least with an airbrush, you're applying and blending all at once, and you can control how much you put on there without it ever looking thick and cakey, so you have a higher chance of it blending, okay? Also, another thing I try to do ahead of time is kind of get an idea of their skin tone before I even go in to do any kind of color correction. It's important to identify the skin tone. Now, she's got this nice necklace tan line on her neck, so we can kind of go in and blend that too if we want. But I just kind of go in and set some colors aside that I'm going to work with. It helps me work a little bit faster. But she does have some freckling too, which is great. She's a good model for this because the freckling is super important to help conceal a tattoo. People don't realize that as soon as you get this covered, if you add back in like little freckles, you'll never see that tattoo. It just disappears to the eye. It fools the eye. It's pretty amazing. That's probably my favorite part of tattoo coverage, to be honest with you. Okay, so I'm gonna work with 2 different tools today. I'm gonna work with the traditional airbrush. How many have this? I'm sure a bunch of you have this guy. So I'm gonna work with this one. I started airbrushing a very long time ago. You're probably never gonna get me to stop using a traditional airbrush gun ever, ever, ever. But I get daily questions on this and can we cover a tattoo with this? So I want to prove to you today that you can, okay? So let's start with choosing a color corrector. And I'm just gonna add in a couple drops. Now this compressor, hopefully it won't be too loud. Maybe I'll set it off to the side. Let me know if it's too loud, Michael. How is that? Is that okay? All right. All right. When working with Dura, I usually do wear gloves. As you can see, I've got color all over my hands right now, so it's not that big of a deal. I'm gonna go in and I'm not gonna go outside that line, okay? I'm gonna stay on top of the dark and not go far out. And the reason for that is because if you start taking your color correction out onto just the regular skin tone, then you have to go back onto the skin tone and correct the orange on the skin tone. So we're not trying to create more work for ourselves. So it's very easy. And I'm sure some of you probably aren't even airbrushing right now. So this is going to be a bit of a foreign concept to you. I want to make sure that you understand what it is I'm doing. I'm very close to the skin right now. And I am not pulling the trigger back very far on the gun at all. And I am constantly keeping it moving and just basically tracing the lines. So that's one pass, okay? I'm gonna have you lean back just a tiny bit closer. Okay, that's one pass, but you can still see a little bit of that dark, right? Do not move on to the next step until you do not see that dark, okay? It's really important because if you do that, then you've just completely reversed everything you've just done and created more work for yourself. Go ahead and do another pass. And it's very easy to control this. As you can see, I am not going outside the lines very much at all. The difference between using this and using the cordless airbrush, the Temp 2 Air, would be that this guy has, let's say about the consistency, or I'm sorry, the accuracy of, you can see it now, about the accuracy of like the tip of a ballpoint pen. And this one is about the accuracy of the tip of a Sharpie marker. Okay, if that makes any difference to you. But other than that, it's fine. Okay, so that's 2 passes. And then usually I'll just kind of look at it and say, you know, okay, I see a couple dark spots here real quick. Let's go ahead and pop a little bit more color there. I don't know if you guys saw how much product of this corrector I added, but it was 2 drops. So this kind of goes back to that whole pricing question that Michael asked me. So far on step 1, I have used 2 drops of makeup, and I still have probably a little bit more in here. So the amount of money that I have going into what I'm using is pretty low, right? So that's something to consider as well. So all the dark is concealed at this point, okay? Then what I like to do is explain to you how we can move through this to the next step without having to clean, okay? I think that's worth talking about for a second. So what I like to do is turn the pressure all the way up on the compressor and spray until nothing else comes out, okay? Spray, 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 okay? Once that happens, then we can move on to that next color, which will be, now I don't know if you guys can see this as clearly as I can, but she's got a bit of a different color here than she does on her neck, right? So we're gonna go ahead and take advantage of that. That's actually gonna help us with blending. So what's different is when we do our face, we want to be even. We want it to be smooth. We want it to be perfection. But when we're doing a cover up on the body, we know that we're going to be dealing with a ton of different skin tones, okay? And we want this to blend in. So we know that we're going to see a little bit of this orange color, a little bit of this yellow color. We're going to see the freckles. And sometimes you'll see me even, this isn't on, but sometimes you'll see me even going in and just kind of like flicking a little bit of product just to create that splotchiness. And people don't really understand what I'm doing if they're seeing that from afar. So I always like to explain, like, I'm just trying to make this look as natural as possible on the body. So we do not want this to look even like the face, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and go in with this, like this yellow undertone. She's a little bit neutral. So I'm gonna go ahead and use this. How you doing? Okay. I have a funny story about tattoo coverage. Doing tattoo coverage at Fashion Week always, I don't know, I always get lots of great stories, but I was under the gun and we were working really fast and somebody came by to do an interview, but we couldn't look up because we were, I think I was covering tattoos like on somebody's toes or feet or something. And I know, right? And it was crazy. Anyway, so I'm down here and I'm covering it up and she had a British accent. That's all I remembered. And I'm covering tattoos, da, da, da. She asked a bunch of questions. She goes, so this is just makeup. Like it just wipes off. And then the tattoos come back and it doesn't do anything to damage them. And I was like, nope, nope, nope. Just looking down, doing my thing. She's like, well, that's a lot less painful than the alternative, isn't it? But I love my tattoos, so I'm just going to keep them. I'm like, okay, ha, ha, ha. And she walks off. So we get done. They call time. Everyone's got to go line up. And I get a breather. I stand up and the guy I was working with goes, you know, she's lost so much weight and looks so amazing. I never would have recognized her without the purple hair. And I was like, who? And he goes, you just got interviewed by her. And it was Kelly Osbourne, and I didn't even pay attention to her. Bad, Tanya, bad. Fashion police came in and interviewed me, and I never looked up. It was awful. Anyway, so that's my story. Okay, so I've got a lighter skin tone in here. So we didn't clean the brush. I'm going to spray, and you're going to see that old color still come out. It's pretty vibrant, and then you're going to see the foundation come out, okay? Did not have to clean it. So I'm going to go in, and I'm just going to kind of start spraying right around that outline. And immediately you'll know, this is actually really important, if you use too neutral of a shade and you spray on top of this and it starts to look a little bit pink, and you'll know immediately, stop what you're doing and add some more yellow into that formula. You will thank me in the future. If it is too cool of a color, it will not, it will oxidize, or it will look oxidized, but it's not oxidized. It'll just look ashy. And you'll know it immediately. So it did that on her. So I'm going to go ahead and stop real quick and mix this up. If you are of the school of thought where you like to back bubble in your airbrush gun, I'm going to say when you're working with an alcohol base, you might want to rethink that and just stir it up, because the back bubbling will pull the makeup back here where it's not wanted or needed and might create more cleaning and product waste. So I just like to stir it up and then go back in. Okay, now I'm happy. Okay, so I'm going around that outer border. You can imagine if I was not talking through the steps of this and telling stories, we would be done by now. This took no time at all, right? So pricing wise, honestly, I'd say just like a 15-minute cover up is plenty. This is one pass. Now on your end, like on the screen, I'm seeing that this looks pretty good. In person, I still see that, you know, we need more, obviously. So now I'm gonna go in and add just a tiny bit more. And this is where you're gonna start seeing me do a lot of toggling on the trigger. And when you're blending out into the surrounding skin, you don't have to go far, but you're gonna do kind of a sweeping motion. And you can be on a lower airflow if it's more comfortable, but I kind of just do one of these things. And this is basically softening up the edges. Okay. And then I'm also kind of looking at the surrounding colors. It's amazing what happens when you see the ink disappear. You start to see everything else that's happening. Oh yeah, I like that. You're seeing that? Or rather not seeing that? Okay, and now as we're blending this down onto the neck, obviously we have a darker skin tone, so I'm just gonna go ahead and throw a little bit darker shade into the gun, using the same method that I used before, spraying out as much as I can of this lighter shade, and then going in.
Can I interrupt for a second? I have a question.
Absolutely.
You just made a really good point. So, you know, when we're looking at a tattoo on a darker skin, that red comes across as maybe almost like a burgundy, or that blue is a purple. Mm-hmm. That orange is a really rich umber. Mm-hmm. So is it just as simple as, it's not like go back to the basics. It's kind of like, look at the color you see, yes, not the color ink they used.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. It's really interesting to me. And maybe that's why I get so excited about color correction in general, is because you actually start to see things change on the skin and you know exactly how to fix it. So for example, like you said, that red starts to look burgundy, let's say. If I see that and I know that I need it to look more, 9 times out of 10, you need to add more warmth, because you don't want it to look that gray undertone. It's always gonna go gray if you don't have enough warmth into it. And this is all areas of color correction. This isn't just tattoos. This is any kind of discoloration, hyperpigmentation, anything. You have to, if you immediately start to see, oh, this is looking a little too burgundy or plum, we don't want it to look quite plum, we want it to be more of that purple, then I need to add in this. You know what I mean? Which is why I say, don't be afraid to have a color wheel in your kit. And you know what? So I was looking at pictures of color wheels for this class. I was just seeing if there were any new ones out there that I haven't seen before. And I went down a rabbit hole and I found color wheel tattoos. And because I do so much color theory education, I was like, oh my God, I need a color wheel tattoo like right here. And it was a flower in a color wheel. It was amazing. So next time you guys see me, I'm probably going to have this tattoo because it's amazing. And I'll know how to cover it because it'll be like a little map of exactly what I need to do. All right. Now, I grabbed a little bit of a darker skin tone. One thing I do want to make sure of is that you're able to identify the undertones that you're seeing in here. And I'm really close to her, and I know she got sunburnt, and I do see a little bit more pink in her skin than you normally would. But I'm cheating because I knew. But when you have these bottles, you can't just hold that up to the skin and say, oh, that's a perfect match, because these are clouded. So you're getting a distorted picture, so to speak. So I am actually just putting 1 drop of this pigment in, and I'm just gonna, I'm a little further away, obviously. Might go in and just add in a little bit there. And then one thing I do want to talk about is replacing the body marks. Wow, there are so many different ways to do that. I was actually playing around yesterday. I covered her other tattoo on her foot, and I'll show you guys a before and after of that too, where I had to add in veins. And that was kind of fun. I don't know, you don't really have to add in veins a lot, but it was kind of fun to do it. So anyway, I was playing around with the Temp 2 Air and the empty pod, and I just kind of grabbed, let's see, where's it at? I have this color right here, this burnt sienna. It's a color corrector. And I was literally turning it like this. Oh, I label all my pods for Dura because you should never mix your formulas. And trust me, I would totally mess it up if I didn't label things. So anyway, I add it into the nozzle there and turn it on, and you'll get a little spitting thing happening, which is really fun for freckles, body marks, things like that, depending on their skin tone, okay? So a lot of times I'll also just take an artist brush that's at a point, like this one is rock hard, and I'll just go in and add in some of her body marks that I saw covered up. And I guess it is worth mentioning here that going forward, airbrush in general is probably going to give your clients a bit more peace of mind being so reduced touch. So in addition to the fact that our job just became a little bit more drawn out with our processes every day, with our sanitation and everything like that, with our setup, then on top of that, just finding a way to make everybody comfortable. Because we're not the only ones that have to change. The clients, the talent, they all have to kind of change their mindset as well. So just something to think about. Having this reduced touch situation is kind of nice, okay? So that is a pretty basic tattoo coverage, like 1 color. Generally, if I can, I do try to cover this early in the game, go do their face, come back, see if I need to do any tweaking, which is what I'm going to do right now, because I really want to make sure we get some color covered. And then maybe I'll go ahead and real quick, clean out my gun. So once I get done with the tattoo coverage, and I work pretty fast when I'm doing it, and I run through those colors pretty fast, you gotta keep running 99% alcohol through here, or things are gonna dry. Alcohol-based makeup dries super fast. So I do generally work with the lid on the cup, and if I'm gonna rest it in between steps or something like that, and then I will spray some 99 through there real quick just to be safe. And I do have a cleaning pot so that it's not super fumey, because alcohol is fumey, if that's a word. So I'm just cleaning this out real quick. And then we'll move on. So then let's move on to color. Okay, so if you have your color wheel, which somehow I've already misplaced mine. I don't know how I do that. But anyway, you've got your color wheel. Across from the color wheel from green, you've got red, right? But then this green actually has a little bit of a yellow green to it. So you have to look at that color wheel. Hold on, guys. Let me see if I can find where I set it. It probably fell on the ground. Oh, here it is. Okay, so if you've got kind of that yellow green, then across from that, you've got the red violet. Okay, that's actually kind of important to know, because if you just go in with this thinking you can conceal it with red, it's actually kind of a pastel yellow green. So I would go in with kind of a pastel red violet. You know, take it an extra step further and it will reduce the amount of work that you have to do. Okay, but I'm going to do half of this tattoo with method 1, which is what I did up here, okay? And then I'm going to do the other half with the conceal and correct all in one step, okay? So you guys can see the differences. Sound good? Okay. So violet, obviously, is made up of red and blue. So I'm going to go in and create my red violet. But I'm going to kind of use a fairer shade of that. Always good to have white and black color correctors and adjusters as well, so that you can lighten or deepen any color to get to where you want to be. And then we're going to go in and do this real quick. I am trying real hard. There's some wispy feather-like stuff happening in here. And that is actually like a blue-black. So I'm trying really hard not to hit that area too heavy with this red-violet. I'm really just focusing on kind of toning down that yellow-green. And that's all kind of in the finger action. You're doing a lot of like flipping of the trigger, flicking of the trigger, so to speak. And then on this area in here, this wispiness that you're seeing inside this feather, that's where we're gonna go in with like a muted orangey color and kind of tone that down because it's more blue. And then of course we'll do the outline as well, but this one's a fun one because it's not real harsh like the mom heart is. This one's kind of a very blended tattoo, so it'll kind of show you that transition, so to speak. I'm hearing bells. Is that somebody's? What's weird? Okay, and then it transitions to this bluish color here. So I'm gonna go ahead and empty out that red violet. The biggest thing is just making sure you watch what's happening more than anything. So across from the blue is an orange, but this is a very fair blue. So we need to go in and lighten up the orange that we have. So I'm gonna do 1 drop of that and like a half a drop of white. Mix that up. And there we go. Immediately it starts to neutralize that. As long as you're not pulling all the way back on that trigger, you will be fine and you will not over apply. I think that's probably everybody's biggest concern. Okay, then we're gonna go ahead and empty out that really fair color. I'm gonna turn my air pressure up, get rid of all that white in there because I want something a little bit more intense for the actual wispiness. We're gonna go, this is actually called the Coral Adjuster in the Temp 2 line. Depending on the skin tone, the level of the skin tone here, I may use something that's more, like one of the colors I use a lot on anything darker than her, like a deep tan and darker is this beautiful, it's like a brick red. What is it called? Hold on, let me see if I can find it here. Well, we have one that's called henna, but I think we have one that's called burnt sienna, and that one works really well as well. The deeper the skin tone, that deeper the corrector, okay? And again, it's more warmth. Now we're gonna go in and we're gonna outline this puppy. And there's really, I guess it's very worth saying at this point, this particular tattoo has some line work that you're gonna have to work on, right? So you would have thought I'd pick something easier, but when you're doing this, you do have to pay attention to what's happening interiorly as well. That's really important because otherwise you're going to end up with a darker interior and you're going to be adding layer after layer and you're not going to understand what's happening. So I really kind of screwed myself on this one, didn't I? I'm just kidding. So I'm going to go through and really just follow the shape that's happening here. All of these little wispy feather lines. I told you guys I like a challenge, so bring it on. Just adding a few drops at a time and working relatively fast because of how fast the alcohol-based dries. Now, when I did that class in Long Beach, I worked with another brand of product that is not an airbrush, but it's super creamy. And it had really nice spreadability, very pigmented. And I feel like our colors work well with that. So I came home, I had just started using that and I came back home and I was like, you know what? I want to kind of play with how these two work together. And so I layered them just to see about like locking in that long lasting. I wasn't sure how long that would last, but I know how long Dura will last. And I kind of layered them to see. And this layer is really nice on top of other stuff. You just have to remember, you have to set it with powder in between the layers. If you're layering two different products on top of each other, please be sure that you're powdering.
So you can do that, just to interrupt and clarify. So you can do that. You can use that Dura on top of a silicone or a water-based product, provided that you've powdered it down and dried it down. Yeah.
And you know, I've actually done the reverse as well, where let's say I do this and I'm like, oh, I just need it to look a little bit more skin-like. Maybe her skin to start with was a bit on the dry side and it just looked a tiny bit too dry for me. Then if I've powdered that, I can go over that with any of our beauty formulas, you know, that have just a little bit more of that supple finish. And as long as there's a powdered layer in between that, they're fine. There will be times when you're doing, well, I don't want to say just tattoo coverage because color theory does apply to everything, but there will be times where you're doing some kind of color correction and you'll whip out these colors to apply. Your client will be like, you're going to do what with that? Like that bright orange color is going to make this dark, I mean, they're seeing black, you know, that black tattoo is going to go away and that orange color is going to cover it. And you're just going to leave an orange spot on my hand, on my skin. What are you thinking? You know, you're going to have to explain it to some people, but really you're the pro there. So just trust your gut. I'm just going through and getting a couple of these other wispy points here. Remember, it's just like the other one, the dark one here. Don't move on if you're seeing any of that outline. To me, a multicolored tattoo is kind of nice to cover up on the back because there are so many different colors going on somebody's back. This actually makes it a little easier to blend, in my opinion. Just going around that outline one more time. We don't want any of that to be showing. Okay. And then quite a bit of product left in here. Because I've been spraying for a while though, just to make sure it doesn't dry out, I'm just gonna run a couple pumps of the alcohol through. And you do have to use 99% alcohol with this alcohol-based formula, just an FYI. Okay, then we're gonna pick our foundation shade. One thing that deserves a little bit of extra lip service is when you're working with an alcohol-based formula, try to keep all your other formulas away from it. Now, luckily, we have 2 color codes with a gray cap for our alcohol base. So if you see any other colors, any other caps laying around on a bottle, like keep those away, because I have been known in a hurry, if I have SB laying around a perfect canvas, and sometimes I'll see the foundation color in the bottle, but not the lid. And the next thing I know, I'm adding the wrong formula into an alcohol-based gun, and that is super sad. See, I see some of your expressions. You feel my pain right now. So bad. Okay, so a couple foundation drops. I'm gonna spray through this. Let me get a new tissue. Spray through that orange. Okay, so now I'm gonna spray a little bit of this. Ooh. And we all know, like the longer you work with a foundation brand, you're gonna know their colors pretty well, right? Like some of us don't, we just grab a bottle and we just know what it's gonna look like on the skin. So that helps. But see, I mean, that's definitely covering it nicely. One of the tricks that I have passed on in some of the classes is I will go grab that self-laminating film, like a 5x7 self-laminating film card, open it up, take the 12 colors of foundation from Dura and spray a dot all the way, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in little dots, and then let those dry and seal it so that you have no exposed anything. It won't oxidize. And then you'll have a guide that you can kind of run up and down the skin to kind of help you pick your colors if you need that head start on remembering how these read on the skin or how they read with the undertones, especially with our Perfect Canvas line having 24 colors. I had a lot of people like, I'm never gonna learn all these. Is there an easier way? So that's just something that there's a picture of the one I created on my Instagram, I believe. And it's been very helpful. I know a lot of people in my classes have done it.
Tanya, I have a question for you while you're working.
Okay.
Because I was like, wow, what a brilliant idea to use a tattoo transfer so you could practice. Because this is a skill that, you know, unless your husband or your girlfriend or your buddy has a lot of tattoos, you can't just practice on yourself. You've got, you need a tattoo to do this. What is those? I know Temp2 used to be a big transfer company. Do they still make transfers, or is that a Temp2 transfer?
They're older Temp2 transfers that I went over and kind of intensified the lines for the purpose of this class, but I don't think that they have, if they have them anymore, they have very few.
Right. Is there recommendations, someplace, a brand, I know Tinsley and things like that? Anybody that does PPI carry them? Anybody have a brand that you know of that's a good quality that people can practice with?
I feel like I saw stencils at the Graftobian booth, but they might have transfers as well. I'm not sure.
Okay, cool.
And I do use a lot of stencils. As a matter of fact, I was going to give her a stencil of, you know, they've got a bunch of like, this says peace, we hope. I mean, they do have stencils as well.
Cool. Just as a time check for you, you're at about an hour, just so you know.
Okay, cool. I could talk for days.
We're good.
Now I know that we had talked about doing both sides of this in different ways. So I will probably, since you guys have already seen me do this method, I'll probably just work through this, but I'm going to try to get her closer to the camera when it's time. I want you to see what happens when you don't remove the vellus hair, because I didn't do it on this one. And I feel like that's very important. It's a very important step that you don't want to skip. This is one layer over the color correction. And I feel like we could go on certain areas a little bit more. But I do think sometimes when I'm covering tattoos for a class, they behave really well. And I'm like, oh, darn, I wish I would have done this so I could show them what to do in that case. So hopefully you guys can see this well enough to see that we still have that peach outline. Can you guys see, does that read? Okay, good. So sometimes what happens is you see that and you're like, oh no. And the number one thing that everyone does is they think, okay, well, I guess I just have to cover it out a little further and take this line out a little bit further. And the next thing you know, you've got this with makeup on it and you don't need that, okay? So I think that's another reason why I like an airbrush, because you can pinpoint right over that peach line and tone that down, and you start to see it go away. And then with our next color, we'll feather out, okay? And it's so much safer that way. That way you don't end up with this huge area that did not need to be made up. Okay. And then you'll see again, like up here, she's a much different color on her skin than she is down here. So we need to keep that in mind. So when I go to the next color, I'll start down here since it's a lighter color. I'll start with that and blending that. And again, if you start to see it turn pink or mauve or anything like that, it's a funny word, mauve. If you start to see any of that, then you know that you need to add in a little bit more warmth into your formula. Now I'm going through and I'm softening that. Oh, I'm trying to not get it onto the other tattoo below. I didn't know if we would have time to do all these tattoos, so I just gave us a variety. But as long as we get the main message across. So I'm just starting with the lighter color because it's easier to move from light to dark than it is to go from dark to light when you're trying to move in between colors in an airbrush. Okay, so we've got this lighter area down here, and then I'm going to go ahead and incorporate this darker, and then we'll tie the whole picture together. She's got a little bit of everything happening here. Sometimes, let's see, what's this? Might work. Yeah, let's try that. Again, if you start spraying it and it doesn't look right, just stop. Yeah, so like that I didn't like. Oh, actually, I do kind of like it for this. So all I'm doing right now is a little bit darker foundation. I'm just adding some spots within that tattoo to kind of blend the top with the bottom eventually. Somebody, I don't remember, I took a tattoo coverage class really early in my career, and it was when I was still terrified, and somebody said, you're going to have to do layers and layers and layers of different colors to get it get it to work. And it just did not sound fun to me. And I think that was another reason why I was like, oh, I think we need to figure out this airbrushing thing. Yeah, that's great. Okay, let's see if I can turn you here. So she's got this really dark tan area right through here that I'm just kind of trying to blend. And then she's got tan lines over here that we could go in and adjust a little bit. All I'm doing right now is blending out more than anything, and then blending down. And then at the bottom, see what I'm doing? Kind of a flicker thing to blend that into the colors at the bottom. And then it's dry. This is just air drying on here real quick. Sometimes when you see the darkness still staying dark, that means that you had too much of a cool shade in there. So you may have to counteract that a little bit. It's pretty common. We're gonna lighten it up just a tiny bit. And it's kind of fun to see that all come together. Remember when I first started, this was like terrifying to me when I was covering a big back piece, and I was like, what is happening? But then when you can go in and fix it, it's kind of fun to see the problem go away. And I'm really good at hiding makeup from myself, so it takes me a second to find where I put each bottle. One thing that really lends to being able to camouflage it with the hair removal thing, the hair is always going to pick it up darker, so you're going to see that. But once the whole thing's covered, then you can kind of go in and adjust it a little bit. I'm going to let that sit for a second because I want to see what happens to this to see if that changes at all. And I want to go into real quick the correct and conceal phase all in one. So again, remember we had like a red violet color that we were using on this green. So we're going to kind of work with the skin tone here. Let me grab the first skin tone that we'll use, which I kind of like this. This is shade number 10. And then we're going to add in a little bit of that red, just a tiny bit of the blue. And I mean, literally like drops at a time. I don't think anyone ever believes me when I say that, but it really does need to just be drops. Okay. And then we're going to go over here. This is the conceal and correct phase. Staying in between the lines. Okay. So if that line right there wasn't there, you would see it already starting to blend nicely with what it's next to. So I'm just going through a really nice diluted application, not too heavy, in that greenish area. And then because this is a foundation color with a little bit of that red in there, I'm going to go ahead and use it for the line work too. And I want you guys to see what's happening here. I'm on low, by the way. My airflow is not very heavy. so that I can really control it. And you can see how we're getting so much of that to go away in one pass with a corrector / foundation in there. Kind of nice. Not that I'm trying to communicate to you which method I like to use, but I'm seeing that I think this might go faster. Oh, you know what? Something I forgot to talk about is the lines, the raised lines on tattoos. So airbrush makeup is not going to erase texture. It's going to erase the appearance of the texture, okay? Obviously, you can't build it up thick enough to get the texture to go away, but when that gets photographed, you're not gonna see that texture, which is really fun. It's kind of the same thing like if you airbrush a pimple. It's raised, and generally, if you were touching it to blend a product onto it, you wouldn't be getting even coverage on the raised part as you would the sides of it. So it's kind of the same concept. And with an airbrush, you're getting even coverage all the way around that raised part, but it's not actually getting rid of it. I mean, it'd be great if it did. But... Okay, so I've gone through and also done these feathery parts inside, interiorly. Really liking that so far. Now we got some blue here. I'm gonna go ahead, and the color of foundation I used needs a little bit more orange to it to be able to tone down that blue properly. I'm gonna stir that up. Notice I'm not back bubbling. I mentioned that before. Spraying till I see the new color come out onto the tissue. Let's just say this was on her leg. And this is pretty important to talk about actually. If this tattoo was on her leg and it was a pretty large tattoo, most likely she'd be getting a little bit cold because the legs are super vascular. And you start to see that, well, you might see goosebumps, but if she gets cold, you might see the veins, the discoloration of the veins going through, in which case you have to be real careful when you move forward with covering all of this that you don't over apply. So sometimes I do take breaks. I try to schedule that in. I have had some really big leg pieces that were like right on a thigh. And I was like, oh man, if I don't get this perfectly blended, this is gonna stand out like a sore thumb. But their legs got veiny, and vascular colors will disappear once they warm up. So if you're adjusting the color based off of when they're cold, when their temperature changes, you could have a problem on your hands. So something to remember. It's definitely worth talking about. This one, this might be too dark, but we'll try this. Yeah. I guess that's another thing I really love about airbrush is you can change your color really easily. All you have to do is see how it sprays real quick and then make a quick adjustment. And if you really wanted to, you could actually, when you stir it up in the cup, you could actually brush it onto the skin that's not being made up so you could see if that blends right. Oh, I have dark color on there. So that's something to consider as well. Is it cold for you? Remember, you're blending out into the other color. the normal skin color. There it is. This is kind of like what it would be is if you were covering a tattoo right here, because you always have that darker top part and then the really fair underarm part. So it's kind of the same concept here. You've got that darker top. You just have to be patient with it and know that it's going to blend. You just have to work from the top down or the bottom up, whatever you're more comfortable with, and then it'll be fine. This is one time when I find that I really don't mind using a line that is a little bit more of a warm undertone predominantly. Way easier to correct than having it go ashy or pink or mauve. And that's why I say too, if you don't know, like if you're just starting to build your kit and you're not sure what colors you need, that's why these starter kits are so great, because they accommodate all of your potential clients and all of the potential color correction situations. And you have to be prepared for that. Anytime I start to see any darkness, I just go in with a little bit of like an orange undertone foundation to tone that down. And the great thing about this is her skin doesn't look like it has a ton of makeup on it. The only thing we're really seeing is the hair, the DeVellis hair. Just adding a couple drops at a time makes it so that you don't take it too far in one direction or the other. I know how scary tattoo coverage can be for some people who are just starting off. I saw a couple people who logged onto this class who took some of my classes in the bridal class and stuff like that, and they were like, I'm definitely taking that tattoo class, because I find that in a lot of my bridal classes, I ask, how many of you guys also cover tattoos as a service? And most people do not raise their hands. So if you think about it, like, what would I charge for something like this? If it were, I mean, like, let's say her wedding dress goes right through here. So all of this needs to be covered. And if I'm not talking my way through it, it's probably going to take me like a good half hour, you know, to get it just right. I'm going to charge for this. I'm probably going to charge more than what I would, you know, like I'd probably add on another 100, 125, depending. I mean, it depends on what area you're in also. So something to consider. Don't be scared of the tattoos. Welcome the tattoos. Yeah, see, that's just starting to disappear completely. That's the best part. It's a good feeling. Cool. So we're definitely seeing. Okay, and then I let this one sit for a little while. So I saw here, you guys probably can't see it as much as I can, but it's a little bit warmer through there. So I'll probably just go in and adjust that as well. And then for time's sake, I want to show you how to finish it off, obviously. I did have at one time, I think it was at a trade show, and somebody told me that if they have issues with the hair, because the hair will definitely create like a discoloration type situation, they took like a mascara wand and kind of tried to comb the makeup out. Do not do that with this formula, okay? It does not work with this formula. I don't know what formula they were using, but definitely don't do that with an alcohol base. It's not good. Okay, so then we're gonna go in and let's go ahead and grab the darker foundation shade. And start adding in. You'll see what happens as I start adding in some of, you'll see like little outlines of something that got covered. Kind of amazing to see what happens where you can kind of camouflage that, and it literally just starts to go away. The eye just starts to get fooled. And I would just take my time doing that all the way around. I do want to show you guys another, I did her foot, I told you yesterday. So I do want to show you that where I had to do the veins in her foot. Oh, there's my ring light. Hold on, let me turn this. Sorry guys, the ring light's obnoxious. Okay, where you go in and you kind of do a wash of the veins in the foot. And for that one, I just used a blue and green adjuster and really lightly just painted that on. The freckles you can do with a chip brush. If you're used to using the chip brush, you can do that. I've used a mascara wand to flick it on there in a pinch. I think I did that actually at Issy because I forgot my chip brush. And then, yeah, just finish it off. Now I'll finish it off with this because I told you guys I would show you and totally forgot to, but I want you to know for sure that you can use this product through the Temp to Air as well.
Tanya, while you're doing that, can I talk about that lovely item you have in your hand? Is that the Trevor Project one?
It is.
It is. So you guys, we just launched on makeupmagazine.com today. Priya just got it up. Temp 2 is offering that particular air with the beautiful rainbow unicorn gorgeousness. And it's 150, I think it is, special offer for this month of June. And that is a benefit for the Trevor Project, which is an incredible organization helping LGBTQ youth in New York City. So I hope, and more than New York, really. I hope that you guys, if you are in need of an air, or if you just happen to love unicorny, rainbowy things, maybe Wendy Dismanette is online. This is an amazing, amazing tool. And we all know we love the air, but also this is an amazing opportunity for you to support a great cause with the Trevor Project. So I'm thrilled that you have that there, because then I don't have to hold my phone up and show a picture of it.
Oh, yes. You know, one of the things I thought that was going to drive me nuts because it's so shiny is that I don't actually have an issue with smudging fingerprints. I thought for sure it was going to be all smudgy because they're so shiny, and no, it's actually fine. But I do find myself shining it up a lot.
Because it's so pretty.
It's like my genie lamp, you know, make my wish.
Well, I love it. It's so cool. Thanks for having me.
But it does work really well with all of our formulas. All of our airs do, really. But I'll tell you what, this thing has saved me time and time again on set for like a last minute situation. Sorry, I'm fixing my light. I realized why it didn't look so nice. There we go. I need a lighting crew here. Anyway, I had to cover a bruise, I think, on a leg. Like, we were shooting a commercial. It was a sunset shot. Literally, time was of the essence. All of a sudden, they placed the talent where they wanted her, and her leg was showing. She had a skirt on. Her leg was showing as soon as they put her in the right position. I was like, shit. I saw this huge bruise on her leg, and I just grabbed this, and again, color theory saved me, but just having this in my set bag was like life-changing. I think it was right when the Air had first come out, and I could not stop talking about it at that point. And the director hires me all the time now because I was able to very swiftly take care of the problem without having to take the talent off of set or whatever. So definitely a game changer.
Tanya, while you're working, 2 quick questions. One, this is the right way. This is the right way, and the way that will last, and it will look great, and it's great for a bride. Is there a quick fix if it's like 2 seconds, they're walking down a runway, no one's going to touch them? Is it as simple as slapping a full coverage makeup on, or do you really still want to go in and do that color correction? Is there any detriment to that, the quick way if you need to?
No, if you're doing if it's like you said, slapping it down on a runway type thing, really, again, it's just, if that outline is showing through at all, it's not going to look right. So as long as you guys can get the focus of the coverage on that outline, and get enough coverage on the rest of the tattoo, it's fine. Just set it with powder and you'll be fine. If you need it to last, but you don't have all of these color correctors in your kit, but you need it to last and you can cover it up with foundation, powder it, that's fine. As long as you're keeping all of the moisture and oil at bay on the skin, you can get this to last for quite a while. It's alcohol based, so it's waterproof and transfer proof. And I mean, I've done photo shoots where we kept it on for a week. So that's why Temp 2 developed this product. This product started in the film industry for tattoos.
Right. Like
giving tattoos, not taking them away. So
my second question, as you're wrapping that up, what is, so let's say that same back tattoo, the wings that you created, you've been talking, we've been on for almost 90 minutes. Like what is the amount of time that you personally, with the experience level you have, would take to cover that tattoo in your regular work?
Well, I mean, if I was like, this was, let's say for a wedding, I would remove the hair. So I consider that skin prep. I would remove the hair. In addition to that, I would say, I don't know, I could probably cover it in like 20 minutes ish. Okay. Cool. Yeah.
So that's your goal, guys, to get your time down. So get those tattoo transfers and practice. Because if you take an hour to cover a tattoo, that nobody's going to be happy about that if it's a small enough tattoo. Like it's too long for someone to sit like a bride.
I feel like when you're first starting out, if you're just playing with all skin types and all skin tones, because everybody has tattoos. So I've had to cover grandma of the bride's tattoos before. Like everybody has tattoos. So if you do it on super dry skin, if you do it on, really moisturized skin, if you do it on men versus women, if you do it on really fair and then on tan and then dark, like do it on everyone and just get used to what these colors do and how the color correctors react to that skin tone. And immediately you'll start to get a knowledge of what you need to do to change it. And I think that's really important. That's the biggest thing I teach is when you're doing spot correction, you spray until you see the spot disappear, not until you see the makeup. Right. And that's when you see the real magic happen right in front of your eyes.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Definitely. And then I always photograph the work too when I'm working on something, because I want to know how it photographs for if they're out and about. So I'll actually go in and photograph it and show them to kind of put their mind at ease. But 9 times out of 10, if you do not remove that hair, it is not going to look right to you. So just remember that as well. And I do have, Michael, if people have questions, I have time. I have probably about 15 minutes that I could answer questions still before I have to. Oh, you're muted.
I mute myself so that you don't hear, I don't end up showing up when they're looking at speaker view. So if any questions, somebody had emailed me a quick question. I believe it was during the earlier part, was about 20 minutes ago. It's from Annette Laurent. She wanted to know if you were using Perfect Canvas or Dura at one point. I'm not sure which point that was, but when would you choose to use one or the other?
That's a great question. Perfect Canvas, for those of you who don't know, that's one of our beauty formulas. It is 24-hour wear. It's a silicone water emulsion with a semi-matte finish, but it is actually great for tattoo coverage. I would use that in a time when I know there's not going to be a lot of friction in the area where the tattoo is. So, you know, I've used it on the neck. What I love about it, it is a very pliable product. So we make a lot of expressions on our faces and the product doesn't crack. Well, on our necks, I mean, because I don't have a 20-year-old neck anymore, I have lines. Michael covers his with hair. It's fine.
Yeah, see it.
But that being said, you do want to use something here that is pliable and will move well with the skin. And obviously an alcohol-based formula tends to be a bit drier. So it would be okay to use it here as long as they don't have like a high neck dress. And I actually have used it. I had a bride who had 2 giant stars on her neck right here. And I covered them and literally you could not see any trace of them because I did it with Perfect Canvas and it looked so incredibly natural, like skin-like.
Yeah, I had a question from Etsy as she texted me. What about covering sunburn back if you've got number one, sunburn with the air, for example? And what if you have tattoo plus sunburn? Like all these pieces, right? Like, what's your fix?
It's a layering process. I mean, I can't tell you, you know what, honestly, with a sunburn, it really does depend on the depth of the tone of the skin and how bad the sunburn is, because I've actually been able to color correct a sunburn with a heavy yellow foundation or color corrector of yellow mixed in with the foundation, and it was fine. And then there were other times where I was like, oh my God, I have got to use green. Like I've seen them so red before. I literally had a bride get burnt in a tanning booth the night before her wedding, came in looking like a tomato. And in that case, yellow was not cutting it. Now, if you're covering a tattoo, in addition to that, it's kind of like up here where she had a little bit of extra redness and I kind of had to compensate for that, which is why I went back and forth between colors. That's one of the biggest things. You have to just have the patience to correct that. But you do so very carefully, because the minute you throw green in there, then that cools everything down a little bit. So you have to find that happy medium. So if you can use yellow with a sunburn, definitely try.
Just as a quick tip, and it doesn't have anything to do with airbrush or tattoo cover, in one of our the business and beauty or bridal sessions, we had talked about this question, and one of the discussion points was, if you terrify your bride into the fact that she's going to like look bad, she's going to take care of herself. So telling a story, this nightmare story, you know, just so you know, if you're going to tan at least no closer than a week before, because I've had brides that have been burnt and then we have to cover their whole back with green, and then they freak out and they'll be really well behaved. And it's just telling them what's going to happen. If they do this, then this will happen. Same thing with tattoos. You know, if they have a dress that's, you know, they have a shoulder tattoo and a dress with a sleeve, after a 12-hour day, I don't care how great a makeup artist you are, something's going to come off if they're moving all day with it. So I think being clear about that. There's no other questions. Your information was like so incredible. So thank you. Can we see Tiffany's pretty face before you guys? We've been looking at her back all day. Hi, Tiffany. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so glad. I'm not glad we're quarantining, but we do have to quarantine, I'm glad that she's quarantining with you, so we got to use your back today.
Thank you. It was fun.
Awesome. That was awesome. Guys, we have been on for a while. I just want to say, Tanya, that was absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much. Tiffany, thank you for being with us and modeling for us today. That was fascinating. If you guys come up with a question later, email me. I can forward it to Tanya for you. Don't forget, if you're going to do any posting on this session, please thank our sponsors, Temp2. That is the reason this is free. 97 minutes of incredible information for free because Temp2 sponsored this session. So thank you, Temp2. Thank you, Tanya Deemer. Your social media, Tanya, it's super long. You have to take my branding class. It's Pro Makeup and Hair by Tanya. Or she could just do Tanya Deemer. I don't know. What do you guys think? Oh wait, you're frozen now.
Well, you know what? I tried to do. No, they gave me, like, Instagram gave me that Tanya Deemer account, and then somebody hacked it off of my Facebook. You know, because I'm Tanya Deemer on Facebook, and they hacked it, and I cannot get into it. It's a mess. So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll just stick with Pro Makeup and Hair by Tanya. You won't forget me.
You're forgiven. All right, guys, I will let Tanya go. It's been a long day for you. Thank you so much for all your hard work with us today. Thank you, everybody.
My pleasure.
Absolutely, my pleasure as well. More our pleasure for sure. Thank you guys again, and we'll see you guys next week, I hope, for Eugenia Wesson. Bye, guys. Bye, Tanya.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Tiffany.
Thank you.